These are the luckiest people in human history that have ever lived. Number 1. Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage was a 25-year-old railroad foreman in Vermont. His job? Blasting rock to lay down new tracks. It was tough, dangerous work, but Gage was good at it. But on September 13th, 1848, something went horribly wrong. As he prepared for an explosion, a spark ignited the gunpowder early, sending a 3-foot 7-inch rod weighing over 13 pounds flying straight into his face. The rod didn't just hit him either. It passed completely through his skull, landing 80 feet away, covered in his brain matter. By all logic, Gage should have instantly died. But here's where things get a little unbelievable. Not only did he survive, he was awake. He could walk, talk, and even answer any questions to people around him.
Yo, bro, I think a pole just went through your head. What you mean?
Number 2. Nicholas Alcemade. It's March 24th, 1944. You're trapped, 18,000 feet up in the air, in a burning plane, and your only way out is to jump. Nicholas Alcemade was a 21-year-old tail gunner in the Royal Air Force, and his job was to defend the Lancaster bomber from enemy fighters. But on the night of March 24th, his mission took a deadly turn. Over Germany, his squadron came under attack. Bullets ripped through their plane, fuel tanks exploded, and in seconds, the bomber became a flying inferno. His parachute was already destroyed by fire. He had 2 choices: burn alive or jump. With no time to think, he made the impossible decision. He leaped into the freezing night sky, plummeting at terminal velocity, or 120 miles per hour, towards certain death.
I'm moving pretty slow for 120 miles per hour.
But fate had other plans. Below him lay a thick forest covered in deep snow. As he crashed through the trees, branches broke his fall, slowing him just enough before he hit the ground. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't believe it. He was alive. His only injuries? A sprained knee and some scratches. He had survived an 18,000-foot fall without a parachute. Number 3. Violet Jessup. Some people are lucky to survive one disaster. But what if I told you that one woman survived not just the Titanic, but also 2 other ship disasters? Violet Jessup, as a child, battled tuberculosis and was expected to die. But she survived. This would be the first of many times Violet cheated death. As a young woman, she became a stewardess for the White Star Line, working aboard the Olympic, the largest and most luxurious ship of its time. In 1911, the Olympic was involved in a terrifying accident when it collided with a British warship, the HMS Hawke. Despite the massive damage, the ship didn't sink, and Violet Jessup blocked away unharmed. But this was just the beginning. A year later, Violet was assigned to a new ship, the RMS Titanic, the most famous ocean liner in history. On April 14, 1912, disaster struck. The Titanic hit an iceberg and began sinking into a freezing Atlantic Ocean.
Help me.
Violet was ordered to help women and children into lifeboats. Finally, she was given a baby to hold and sent onto a lifeboat herself. Hours later, she was rescued by Carpathia, surviving the most famous shipwreck in history. But her story wasn't over yet.
No, please don't tell me there's more.
In 1916, during World War I, Violet became a nurse on the Britannic, which had been converted into a hospital ship. But just like its doomed sister, the Britannic met a terrible fate. It struck a mine and began sinking rapidly. Violet jumped overboard, as a lifeboat she was in was nearly sucked into the ship's propellers. She hit her head underwater but managed to reach the surface. Once again, she survived. Number 4. Riker Webb. Imagine being lost in the wilderness, surrounded by towering trees, the sounds of distant animals, and the creeping cold of an approaching storm. Now imagine you're only 3 years old. It was June 3rd, 2022. It was an ordinary day in Troy, Montana. Riker was playing outside.
Meow.
I'm just kidding, it actually looked like this. Suddenly, he was gone. His family searched frantically, calling his name, but there was no sign of him. Panic set in. The wilderness surrounding our home wasn't just a backyard. It was an unforgiving, dense forest. Hours passed. The search team grew. Helicopters, drones, canine units. Everyone was desperate to find the little boy before nightfall. As the sun set, Temperatures dropped into the low 40s. For a toddler, these conditions were life-threatening. There were bears, mountain lions, and the ever-present danger of simply getting lost deeper into the forest. But Riker, against all odds, survived. No food, no water, just his instinct and sheer resilience. But how? What did he do during those 2 terrifying nights? On June 5th, searchers finally found him, sitting outside in an old shed miles away from his home. He was exhausted, hungry, and covered in dirt. But miraculously, he was alive. Number 5. Roy Sullivan. The chances of being struck by lightning in your lifetime are about 1 in 12,000. It's a pretty rare event, right? But for park ranger Roy Sullivan, these odds didn't exactly bring any comfort. In fact, he survived an incredible 7 lightning strikes over 35 years. Sullivan's lightning saga began in 1942 when he was running through a storm in Shenandoah National Park. From there, the strikes kept coming. In 1969, 1970, 1972, 1973, 1976, and 1977, lightning just couldn't seem to stay away from him. After surviving so many strikes, he became something of a local legend, and people couldn't help but joke about it. There were even rumors that he had lightning rods on his 4 poster beds to help protect himself. Roy Sullivan passed away in 1983 at the age of 71, but ironically, it wasn't lightning that finally took his life. His story remains one of the most bizarre examples of survival and one man's strange connection to the forces of nature. Number 6. Aaron Ralston. In April 2003, while canyoneering alone in Blue John Canyon, Utah, Ralston's right arm became trapped under an 800-pound boulder. He was stuck for 127 hours, which is over 5 days, with barely any food, water, or hope of rescue. When all hope seemed lost, he made a life-or-death decision, amputating his own arm with a dull multi-tool to escape. Even after cutting off his own arm, he didn't bleed to death. He managed to rappel down a 65-foot cliff, hike 6 miles, and finally encounter a family of hikers who helped save his life. Number 7. Bill Morgan. In 1999, Bill Morgan, an Australian truck driver, suffered a massive heart attack due to a reaction to his medication. His heart stopped beating for 14 minutes, and doctors declared him clinically dead. Even though they managed to resuscitate him, he fell into a coma for 12 days, and doctors told his family he had almost no chance of survival. They even suggested taking him off life support, but against all odds, Bill woke up, completely fine. No brain damage, no permanent health issues, just a second chance at life. After his miraculous recovery, Bill decided to turn his luck around. He quit his stressful job, proposed to his girlfriend, and started fresh. To celebrate his new life, he bought a scratch-off lottery ticket, and to his shock, he won a brand new car worth 17,000 Australian dollars. His incredible survival story caught the attention of the local news station, which wanted to film a reenactment of his lucky lottery win. They asked him to scratch off another ticket on camera to recreate the moment. Well, let's take a look what happened.
Survived this. I'm only 37, and at 37 I've got so much to look forward to.
He didn't know it, but that included an engagement, a new job, the new car, and even more good luck when we asked Bill to reenact buying his scratchy ticket.
I just won 250,000. I'm not joking.
You're not, are you? Really?
I just won 250,000. Oh, please don't kill me.
You have too. Congratulations, Bill. How are you? Fantastic. Look. It's just...
I think I'll have another heart attack.
Oh.
Bill had told the agency owners he'd keep buying scratchies until he won the cash.
Can you believe this man's luck? No. I'm in shock. I'm still shaking.
For a man who last year lived in a caravan, the sudden windfall inspired dreams he wanted to share with his fiancée.
I won 250,000, honey. I have. We got that new house.
Yes, as the cameras rolled, he actually won again. This time, 250,000 Australian dollars, or 170,000 USD. Number 8. Jose Salvador Alvarenga. In November 2012, Alvarenga, an experienced fisherman from El Salvador, set out from Mexico's Pacific coast on a small boat with a young crewmate, Ezequiel Cordoba. They were supposed to be gone for just a day or two, but a sudden storm destroyed their engine and navigation equipment. For the next 438 days, or 14 months, Alvarenga drifted aimlessly across the Pacific Ocean with no way to call for help. With no supplies, Alvarenga had to rely on pure survival instinct. He caught fish, turtles, and birds with his bare hands, drank rainwater, and sometimes even his own urine to stay hydrated. He used floating debris to collect food and protect himself from the sun. Cordova gave up hope and refused to eat, eventually dying of starvation. Alvarenga, heartbroken, kept his friend's body in the boat for a few days before finally letting it go.
Wait, I'm still alive!
Now completely alone, he had to fight against madness and depression. After 14 months adrift, Alvarenga miraculously spotted land, a tiny island in the Marshall Islands, over 6,000 miles away from where he started. He swam ashore, barefoot and weak, and was rescued by locals. Doctors were stunned. Despite losing over 50 pounds, he was still alive and had no major illnesses. Number 9. Tsutomu Yamaguchi. Yamaguchi, a 29-year-old engineer, was in Hiroshima on a business trip for Mitsubishi when the first atomic bomb was dropped. He was just 3 kilometers, or 1.9 miles from ground zero when the bomb exploded. The blast threw him into the air, ruptured his eardrums, burned his face and arms, and temporarily blinded him. Despite his injuries, he staggered into an air raid shelter and survived the nuclear firestorm. After surviving Hiroshima, Yamaguchi returned home to Nagasaki the next day. He reported to work on August 9, 1945, still bandaged and burned. As he was explaining to his boss what had happened in Hiroshima, the second atomic bomb exploded.
Yeah, boss, it was crazy. It's not like it's ever gonna happen again. Oh my.
Again, he was about 3 kilometers from the blast. The second bomb flattened his office, but he miraculously survived, even though 80,000 people died in Nagasaki. His already burned skin was exposed to even more radiation, yet somehow he didn't die. Most people exposed to one atomic bomb died from radiation poisoning. Yamaguchi survived both and lived to be 93 years old. He fully recovered, got married, had children, and even lived long enough to see his great-grandchildren. In 2009, the Japanese government officially recognized him as the only person to survive both atomic bombings. And finally, number 10, Franz Salak, the luckiest or unluckiest man alive. In 1962, Salak was on a train that derailed into a river. 17 people drowned, but he somehow swam to safety within just a few bruises and a broken arm. In 1963, a year later, while flying for the first time, the plane's door blew off mid-air, sucking passengers into the sky. 19 people died when the plane crashed. Frayne, he was miraculously sucked out of the plane and landed at a haystack, completely alive. Just 3 years later, in yet another transportation disaster, a bus he was on skidded off the road into a river. 4 people drowned, but Salak swam to shore unharmed. In 1970, his car suddenly caught fire, but he jumped out just before it exploded. In 1973, another car caught fire, and this time, flames shot out of the air vents, burning off his hair, but he survived again.
Are we done yet? I'm sick of this.
We're about, what, halfway there?
What?
In 1995, while walking in the streets, he was hit by a bus, but only suffered minor injuries. Shortly after that, 1 year later, driving on a mountain road, he swerved to avoid an oncoming truck, crashing through a guardrail and off a 300-foot cliff. His car exploded on impact, but Frayne was ejected from the vehicle and landed in a tree completely unharmed. At 73 years old, after cheating death 7 times, Franz Salak bought a lottery ticket for the first time in his life. He won $1 million.